Before I start the video, of course, like, share, subscribe, comment, hit that notification bell. I think it's in that corner. Then you know when we have all kinds of awesome content, like right now. Just to give you a taste of what we have recently. Sean Clarita interview this morning. I thought it was great. I love Sean, one of my favorites in the game. Sergio Oliva interview we did last week on the Dr. T show was great. Had a really cool episode of MD Global Muscle last week with Peter Molnar. All kinds of great content. Check it out on this channel. Now let's get into it, guys. So during the Romania Muscle Fest broadcast, the pay-per-view, Giles Thomas, who was actually, he didn't announce it. It was announced by Billy Garnon, the MC, your host Billy on Instagram. What's up, Billy? That there will be a return of the Masters Olympia for 2023. Unfortunately for you Americans like me, it's not going to be here. It's going to be over in Romania. I think the town was called, oh, don't quote me. It was like Erg or Oog or I don't know. Anyway, it's in Romania. And it's going to be invitation only. And it's going to be all men's divisions, meaning open bodybuilding, 212 bodybuilding, men's physique, and classic physique, which is kind of odd to me because classic's only been around a couple of years. So how many masters can we really have? Aside from the first classic physique champ, Danny Hester, who's 53, he's my age. But most of the guys aren't that old. It's a younger man's game for sure. So invitation only. We will have a Masters Mr. Olympia for the first time in many years. And this is kind of a bummer, I'm sure, for a lot of there's a lot of guys who turn pro as masters. A lot of them have never even competed as pros. Others have done, these little national master shows. And, some of them like Vinny Galanti, they're pretty good competitors. A lot of them, they just got very lucky that they entered a show where nobody good showed up that day. And so I know a lot of them I was hearing posts from guys who turned pro as masters who are, I can say it because that would have been me. I would have been if I had turned pro as a masters, I would not have been a good pro at all. I mean, I'm missing triceps, my shape, it's not that great. But, guys who are in that category, they're just not very good. Like you put them on an open bodybuilding stage and you'd be like, oh, how did this guy turn pro? What is he doing up there? A lot of them were talking about, Masters Olympia. Oh, I'll do that. No, you can't just jump into the Masters Olympia. This is going to be invitation only. They're going to spend a lot of money and do a great production. Jake Wood always does. I'm guessing Tim Gardner's going to partner up with him. Alina Popa, the whole crew that puts on like the Romania Muscle Fest, which had tremendous production values. So they're going to need some names. So I made my wish list of who I would want to see. I'm only going to talk about 212 and open. 212 real quick. I'd like to see the OGs, Kevin English, David Henry, who's still competing, Jose Raymond, who just quit competing 4 years ago, Flex Lewis, who just retired 4 years ago as well. Now, this is my wish list. I know most of these guys have no interest in returning to the stage once I start talking about this Mr. Olympia, Masters Olympia. And I don't think they're going to go for big names. They're not going to invite pros who just happen to be over 40. They're going to want names, guys who did a lot, achieved a lot in the sport, because that's what sells sponsorships. That's what sells tickets. Not some guy he's 40 or 41. He's still competing as an open pro. God bless those guys, but I wouldn't want to see them on the Masters Mr. Olympia stage. I'd want to see like some legendary names. So this is a wish list because most of these guys, no interest in ever competing again. Jay Cutler, first and foremost. I think Jay could still look really good if he wanted to. He doesn't want to. He looks great right now. He's downsized significantly from when he was walking around at 290 pounds all year and competing anywhere between like 245 and 260, I think were his best weights. I actually liked him a little when he was lighter. So Jay, I'd love to see up on that master stage. Phil Heath. Now, Phil might actually do it. He's 42 now, I think. And we did an interview on this channel a couple months ago. And he was talking about his new company, Transcend, that he's with, the hormone replacement company or the clinic. Anyway, he did make a couple remarks like maybe if they bring back the Masters Olympia, he might think about coming back to compete. So I'm sure they would want, and they will invite 7-time Mr. Olympia Phil Heath to be in the Masters Olympia. He's already got 7 Mr. Olympia titles. You know, most of the guys, a lot of the guys I'm going to mention, they have an Olympia title anyway. So they don't need, it's not like they need an Olympia title. But Phil Heath still very, very, looks great. If you follow him on Instagram, he's still jacked, still big, round, full. If he stepped on the gas a little bit more, I'm sure he could look very, very close to what we saw just a couple of years ago. He hasn't been gone that long. You know, and people would say the bubble gut thing. Yeah, when he's worked really, really hard in the comparisons, imposing, he has a harder time controlling his midsection now, but I don't know if that would be an issue. So Jay and Phil, my top 2 picks. My next pick, Kai Green. Come on. So Kai, he was second place to Phil Heath 3 times, 3 years in a row. Never got an Olympia title. He's one of those guys like Flex Wheeler, Kevin Leveroni, Sean Ray, that a lot of us just assumed, a lot of us who would follow the sport for a while, we assumed he would win the Olympia, at least one Olympia title eventually. He never did. So and he still looks phenomenal. If you follow Kai Green on his Instagram, and he's got a YouTube channel too, he looks almost identical to when he stopped competing. We haven't seen him compete since 2016. So he could definitely be in the, out of all these guys, he's probably, it would probably come down to a battle between Phil and Kai, honestly, if they were both in it. Dexter Jackson. Dexter just retired a couple years ago after 20 plus years as a pro. He's also downsized. He's just on TRT. Healthy. He looks great. So I don't think Dexter would have any interest in coming back. You know, that's a whole other issue. We could talk about each guy. Would they come back? Probably. Most of them, the answer would be probably not. I don't think Dexter has any interest in returning for a Masters Olympia, but maybe he would. It's a title he never won. And Dexter, when he walked away from the sport the last year, he did the Tampa Pro, not because he needed to win the Tampa Pro title. He'd already won Mr. Olympia at that point, 5 Arnold Classic titles. So it's not like he needed it for his resume, but it was a show he had never done, and he wanted to do it because it was in his native Florida, Tampa Pro, and he did it, and he won it. He beat Ian Valliere, Luke Sando. It was a great show. So maybe Dexter might come back because he's never won a Masters Mr. Olympia title. But then again, most of these guys I'm talking about, they've moved on. They're good. They've been there, done that, nothing to prove. Next on my list of guys I would like to see, my greedy little brain, Dennis Wolf. I loved Dennis Wolf back in the day. You know, around from 2005 to 2010, his prime, I'd say, competitively, Dennis was damn good. He did as well as 3rd place at the Mr. Olympia one year. He won the Arnold Classic. I think it was 2013 or 14. You know, he's downsized significantly. He looks really healthy, looks younger. He looks very athletic. He's got a great business as a coach now. So he doesn't need it. But that's another guy, never won the Olympia. Maybe a Masters Mr. Olympia title could entice him out of retirement. Who knows? Victor Martinez, my next guy. So Victor, as many of you know, came very, very close to winning the Mr. Olympia in 2007. It was a very, very controversial 2nd place to Jay Cutler. Victor won the Arnold Classic, New York Pro, or I think he was Night Champions when he won. Victor won many, many shows, but he never won an Olympia. And he still looks pretty much the same as when he was competing. He's not that old either. He's only, what was he born in, 73? So is he even 40? I think he was born in 73, so he wouldn't even be 40 until, I believe his birthday would happen before this, July or August. So I'm not even sure Victor would, wait a minute, 73? Yeah, Victor would be, what am I saying? That would make him almost 50. I'm such a doofus. Yeah, so Victor's well over 40, so he would be eligible for sure. Another guy, Dennis James. Dennis is, I think he's like 54, 55. He's not that old. Downsized a little bit, but I bet Dennis James could get back into competition for him if he wanted to. And he was, I know he was top 5. I think he took 3rd at the Olympia one year. Dennis was pretty damn good. He was a mass monster. I mean, some of his shots, like his crab most muscular was just off the chain. Branch Warren. Branch hasn't been retired that long. Branch is still holding a good amount of size. He's downsized, but he still looks so good that people complain that he needs to be much smaller. The late Jerry Ward did a whole video about it, and I did a reaction video, and he did a reaction video to that. But Branch, yeah, that's another guy I'd like to see, because Branch is he's over 40, but he's still he walked away from the sport he was still doing well. It wasn't like he was forced out because he was losing and muscle tears and all that. He could still look pretty good. Here's one just for fun. Marcus Rule. I mean, Marcus Rule, he was the freak of all freaks. Still a big dude. He's older. He's not that old. I think we're actually around the same age. He might even be younger than me. I'm 53. I think Marcus is 52. So Marcus has been away from the sport for a while. Still looks like a big dude. I've seen him in the videos with Urs Kalaczynski, the Miracle Bear. They're friends, and he's training with them. I bet Marcus could whip himself back into pretty damn great shape. Now, I don't think any of these guys would look as good as they did in their prime. Masters shows they never do. I mean, for those of you who are in your 20s and you think you're going to look just like this when you're 50, 55, I got some bad news for you guys. No, Father Time is undefeated. You're not robots. Your body will change. It's not going to look as good. It's just not. Otherwise, we would have the best bodybuilders in the world. If you kept looking the same or improving, the best guys would be like 50, 60 years old. But we see the prime tends to be, for most guys, 30 to 35. Some of them can push it a little beyond that, but most bodybuilders are in their physical prime somewhere between 30, 35. I'm going to say 35 for most guys. That's like when I think I looked my best, was 30 to 35. And, I looked good at shows after that, but things do start going downhill. Sean Ray. Sean walked away in his own terms years and years ago. Didn't have any injuries, no major health problems, nothing like that. He still trains. He doesn't look the way he used to, but I bet if he really wanted to, he could. Now, I know Sean has zero interest in doing this, but this is just my wish list, who I'd like to see in this Masters Olympia. And the last guy on my list, and then I'm going to get to your guys' list, Lee Priest. Lee still looks great. Lee's he's well over 40. He'll be 50 next year. So he could do it too. So these are all mostly guys from the late 90s into the early 2000s. That was their heyday. So they're all in their 40s. I don't think anyone on this list is over 50 except for Marcus Rule, Dennis James, Dexter, obviously. Kai's not 50 yet, I don't think. Phil's not. Jay's not. Yeah, Jay turns 50 next July. So, most of these guys would still look pretty damn good. Especially the ones who retired fairly recently. And that's my wish list, who I would want to see the Masters Olympia. Let's see what you guys, who do you guys want to see? And if you want to throw up men's physique and stuff too, just because I didn't talk about it, I don't really follow that division that closely, unfortunately, and it's not out of animosity or anything. I'm just not that interested in it. We're on the best bodybuilding journalists. Keep on rocking. Oh, I must have picked a bad time to go live because nobody's on the chat. Oh boy, guys. So, yeah, I was hoping to engage you guys in a conversation about this. Apparently, I picked a terrible time. Yeah. Wow. So, yeah, I'm thinking about, if I think about just for a minute, classic physique, I can't think of one guy other than Danny Hester that's even over 40 at this point that is a name. I don't think Arash Rabar is over 40 yet. I don't think he is. He might be. If so, I'd like to see him up there. Yeah, most of the classic guys are pretty young. Yeah. Wow, guys, I thought there'd be more of you here. It must be like near quitting time at work for a lot of you on the East Coast of the USA. And over in Europe, it's, like 9, 10 o'clock at night for most of Europe at this point when we're talking. Oh, here we go. Hello. Jose, Carlos. Hello back. Emil, thanks. Do any of you guys have any suggestions? Who do you want to see in the Masters Olympia? You can leave it in the comments if you're watching this later when it's not live. But the whole reason I was doing it was so that you guys could talk about it. Lee Priest could definitely do it. Thank you, Emil Lakov. Yeah, Lee has not really lost a beat. I know he's had like a couple injuries and things like that, but he still looks fantastic. And he would be, there's a 212 division. I'm pretty sure Lee could get down to 212. 212 division, I don't think Sean would do it or Lee would do it because they were doing so well in the open classes, but they would be pretty tough to beat if they came back and did the 212. Of course, you got much younger guys like Jose. Actually, Jose's not that young. Dave Henry, Flex, it would give him a run too. From Brazil, Victor Martinez would probably win it all if he wants to do it. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, you know what? If everyone on that list that I just read, the top ranked guy in this list would be Phil Heath. He's got the most Olympia titles. and he competed up until 2019. So he hasn't been gone that long. He's only missed the last, or did he? No, was he in 2020 Olympia too? I think he was, right? So he hasn't been gone long, and he's still in really, really good shape. Phil still trains hard, still has almost all his muscle. He's downsized just a little bit, not much at all. And that's really probably just a result of stepping down the doses of the gear and stuff. He's with Transcend, and he's just on TRT and some peptides and stuff. But I think Phil would be probably, out of all these people, and Kai, the ones who would look the closest to how they looked on stage if they came back now. I shouldn't say that. Dexter would probably look just as good because he's had the time to rest, and he hasn't been gone that long. He's only been gone a couple of years. Yeah, but Victor Martinez still looks really, really good, man. Victor still, he hasn't competed much for the past few years. I think he's on his way out as far as competition. He's got other things going on. He competed for quite a while. He turned pro back in 2000 because the first time I saw him in person, is that right? No. I remember seeing him at guest pose at the 2001 NPC New England show, which was in May of 2001. Yeah, and I think he was just getting ready for his pro debut at that time. I think he had just won nationals the year before, and he was going to be making his pro debut at the, still at that time, I believe it was called Night of Champions, which is, we now know that show as in a different version, different promoter as the New York Pro. But yeah, Victor would look really, really good if he came back. I have no doubt in my mind. Anybody else, guys? Anybody else? Yeah. Live chat. You're supposed to be chatting. Maybe I should have done an Instagram and given you guys a little heads up about this. But yeah, Johnny Jackson was thinking of it. Top 5 maybe. I don't know if they'd invite Johnny. Maybe they would. I mean, Johnny was in, he did a ton of shows. He won a lot of shows. He was a staple in the industry for a long time. I just don't know how far down the line from like superstar status they're going to go for the invites. Like I said, they're not going to invite some guy that turned pro, a couple of years ago at the Masters North American or something. I'm not putting these guys down, but they're not at the level of these guys I'm talking about. These guys I'm talking about, they've all been on the Olympia stage multiple times. Some of them are Olympia champions. Most of them have been in the top 5 at the Mr. Olympia, top 3, top 5 at the Arnold Classic. We're talking elite out of the Masters, and that's who you want in your show. If you want to sell tickets, if you want to get sponsors to give you money to sponsor your show, you need to give them something back on their investment. So you go for big names, prestigious names. Emil Lakov says, I think Phil would shoot a bit higher and jump on a regular show if he comes back. I don't know, because like I said, we did that interview, Phil and I, a couple months ago, and he did say something about he might think about getting back in shape, back, to his normal size, which he's not much smaller now. If they brought back a Masters Mr. Olympia, that would maybe entice him into coming back to competition. And this could be it, especially, Jake Wood is going to do a first-class job. He's going to put a lot of money into the production, make sure this is all first class. I happen to think there's a very strong chance Phil will do it, and I'm very sure they're going to invite him. He'd be like the first guy I would call if I was Jake Wood or whoever else is helping him promote it. Lee Haney, yeah, Lee's all good. He's all set. I mean, all the guys I mentioned, they could do it. I don't think Lee physically could do it, only because he's already past the age of 60. I think he's 62. He's got no joint pain. The guy's in fantastic condition physically, cardio condition, much downsized from his competitive days, but very healthy. I'm sure he has better mobility and flexibility than me, obviously. My flexibility and mobility sucks, but for certain, 99.9% of men his age, 62. So Lee Haney, I don't think he has any interest in trying to get big again, getting back on gear again, any of that stuff. But I agree, Lee was one of the best. He was 8-time Mr. Olympia. The only other man that did that was Ronnie Coleman, 8 Olympia wins. Victor Martinez looks huge still, says Emil. Yeah, every time I've seen Victor, I'm like, wow. And I can't recall the last time he competed, but it's been a couple of years now. It's been a couple of years. I want to say, what did he do? He didn't do Puerto Rico Pro. He would have won something like that. I think he came back, I want to say the most recent, maybe the Arnold, 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe it's been longer than I think, because, time flies. And a lot of times I realize way more time has gone by than I thought. I'm like, oh my God, that was 5 years ago? Oh my God, that was 10 years ago? I'm always shocked at how fast time goes. But yeah, Victor would still look, because every time I see him, he's still got that fullness to his muscles. And that's what a lot of guys lose that, because they go off gear, obviously. When you go off gear, that blown up fullness to the muscle goes away. It's a very temporary look that you have to stay on gear for. But Victor's still very, very brown, full, big. He would do great. You look pretty damn good still, Ron. Mike, jumping yourself. How well? I'm not a pro. B, if I was a pro, I'd be in that category of guys I talked about who turned pro as masters, who would look foolish next to these guys. And this is invitation only. Like I said, it was almost hilarious to me when I'm reading comments from guys who are masters, and I'm not knocking masters. I'm old. I'm a master. But they were saying, I might do the Masters Olympia. And these are guys who maybe they've done like top 5 at some Baltimore Masters Pro, a show like that, or the one they have in Pittsburgh, Masters USA. They're not horrible, but they're not on the level of, would people buy, would fans around the world be excited to hear that you were in the show? Would they want to buy a VIP ticket to see you? Would they want to buy a pay-per-view package to see you? Most of these guys, if they're honest with themselves, the answer would be no, nobody knows who I am. Nobody cares. I mean, yeah, there's only a few guys competing in Masters Pro shows now that I can even name. Like Vinny Galante's one. He's one name. He's won a few shows. He wouldn't be terribly out of place up there. He's a lot smaller than most of the guys that I mentioned there, but still, he had a very, very balanced physique. He gets in a great condition. I see a lot of the guys who turn pro as masters, they're missing like entire body parts, like no legs or no back or no chest. Something's completely missing. And yet, they were good enough to win that day against whoever showed up that day to compete against them. But, put them next to like a Victor Martinez or Kai Green, and they'd look like they were in a different species. They wouldn't even look like they were in the same genus of animals. Yeah. Kamal could win if he got an invite. Ah, there's a good one. Kamal. Yeah, Kamal's over 50. Kamal is 52. There's a good one. Yeah, and Kamal. It's just, I don't know if they're going to invite active competitors. That's the thing. I mean, do you want to see active competitors, or would you want to see guys who you haven't seen in a while, at least a couple of years? I mean, we've seen plenty of Kamal. Kamal's awesome. But I've seen him compete twice this year already, and I'm going to see him again 5 more weeks at the Olympia. I don't know how much more excitement there would be around that, but maybe it would be cool to see someone like Kamal, who's still active, go up against some of these guys who haven't been around for a while. We want to see you on the Masters run. I appreciate you guys' silly compliments there, but yeah. I would look so foolish next to any of these guys. I'm not delusional. I know exactly what I look like. If I was that great, I would have turned pro. I was at the Universe 3 times, 09, 11, 13. I did Masters National in 13. If I was that good, I would have won one of those shows. Best I did was 2nd place at 2011 Universe in the heavies. Still would have had to win the overall to get the pro card there. Yeah. Let's see. Is Lou Ferrigno a possibility? Says Drush Marush. I don't know if Lou could physically get himself looking that big and ripped again. And I only say that because I think he's like 70 years old, I want to say. Does anybody know how old Lou Ferrigno is? I know I could look up on my phone, but I'm using my phone to do this. Lou is, I think he's about 70, because Arnold is like 74 now, and I know Arnold was just a few years. So I don't think physically, I would not want to see, I don't know if they're going to put an age cap on it, but that'll probably be reflected in who they invite. I don't think they're going to be inviting anybody over the age of 60. That's my feeling. I mean, if I were Jake Wood and whoever else is helping with the promotions, I would not invite anyone 60 years or over, just because, I had this discussion with Milo Sarshev on a show we did here, Inside the Mind, a couple months ago. He's very much against the whole Masters Olympia thing. He doesn't think guys in their 50s and 60s should be blasting a bunch of gear and getting back on stage. This is a time of life when you're supposed to be, trying to focus on your health and hopefully living longer, not doing any more damage to your body. And most of them, Most of the competitive bodybuilders who are in their 50s and 60s have already done a good amount of damage, and they spend the rest of their lives trying to live, the smart ones, trying to live as healthy as possible, very healthy diet, doing a lot more cardio, focusing on having just a healthy heart, lungs, keep the body weight down because that is healthier. Little dogs live a lot longer than big dogs. So, yeah, Milos is still looking good. Yeah, Milos, because that was a question I asked Milos. I said, they're talking about bringing back the Mr. Olympia, which at that time it was just talk. And he said, nope, no interest. He does not have any interest in coming back to competition. He lost his motivation because that guy did like 87 pro shows. He had a good career, really good career, and he's doing very well as a coach now. Very well-respected coach. Works with a lot of great athletes like Samson Dauda, who's doing the Olympia, Behruz Sabani, who just won the Romania Muscle Fest, Jamie the Giant. Milos works with a lot of really good athletes, and he's an excellent coach. So, no, you will definitely not see Milos. Yeah, you won't see Lou Ferrigno. There's no way. But yeah, I would put a cap on it. I wouldn't say you can't be over 60, but I wouldn't invite anybody from, like, let's say guys who were competing in the 80s. They would all be way too old now. Those guys would all be in late 50s, early 60s or beyond. And I wouldn't want to see that because there's probably no way they would even look remotely the way they used to. The problem with a lot of the past Masters Olympia shows, they did have Masters Mr. Olympia show for about, I want to say like 10 years. It's been gone for about 10 years now, I think. But, like Vince Taylor won, I think 5 of them. He was unstoppable. Vince could probably still do it, and he's over 60. Vince looks phenomenal. But you did see some guys, it was kind of sad because you remember the way they used to look, and they came back with half the muscle, twice the fat, way smaller, and they were not in any kind of condition, like just maybe you could see their abs, but they were certainly not lean and shredded like they used to be because, the body doesn't always... The mind may be willing, but the body says, nah, dude, I'm done. Because it's just not going to respond the same. Like I said, we're not robots. We're not machines. These bodies of ours, they do age. You're not going to be as big and strong at age 70 or 80 as you were at 30 or 40. You're just not. Unless you didn't start training until you were 70 years old. Because there's always someone who comes on and goes, well, I'm 70 and I'm stronger than I've ever been. I go, okay, when did you start training? I go, I started training 2 years ago. I'm like, yeah, thank you. Next. Yeah, if you started training like most of us when we were very young, I was 13, 14, you're not going to be, you're going to hit your peak of size and strength. Depends on the guy, but for most people, that's going to be somewhere around late 20s to late 30s. That's the biggest and the strongest you'll ever be in your life. I know some people are at their strongest in their 40s. You don't need to tell me. I'm sure some of you that's the case, or you got to your biggest at age 40 or whatever. You're not going to be at your biggest and strongest 30 years after you started training. It's just no, or 40 years after you started training. Why don't we see old people in the Olympics? Why are most of the Olympic athletes younger people? Because their bodies are young and strong and resilient, and they can train 8 hours a day and recover from that. If it was a case where the body just never aged, we'd have the Olympics every year would be like 70, 80, 90-year-old men and women. No. 70, 80, 90-year-old bodies, they're not what they used to be. It's just, that's biology, guys. You young people, you don't believe me. You think you're going to be 90 years old and you're going to look exactly the same way you do now. You're going to feel the same way. You're going to be strong. You're going to have great sex. So you think you think everything's going to be the same forever. And I'm sorry to be the one to break the bad news to you, but no. Human beings, we age. It's biology. We're born, we're babies. We grow up, hit middle age, old age, and then we die. And old age, as we get older, we can fight it. I'm going to be fighting till my last breath, believe me. You can still train hard, eat right, do your cardio, take plenty of great supplements, get on a little bit of growth hormone. That certainly helps fight the aging process. A lot of things you can do to fight it, but you're not going to beat the aging process. You're not going to look 30 years old, 25, 30 years old forever. That's science fiction. And I know a lot of you young guys and girls, you're like, nah, not me. I'm going to be, and I see women are in denial a lot because I'll hear from 50-year-old women saying, I still look just as good. And they don't. They look good for 50, but they don't look like when they were 25. And they'll say, I still got young guys after me. You're like, well, yeah, young guys are horny. They'll bang anything, silly. That's like saying, you know, that's like a box of moldy crackers saying, I'm great because starving people still want me. Well, starving people eat anything. I'm off on a tangent, but I was just trying to get some more. I was trying to kill some time to get a couple more things for the chat before I go. Emil Lakoff, health is wealth, legend status stays forever. Yeah. Darren Charles is interested. Okay, Darren, sure. Darren, a smaller guy, but they used to call him the $10,000 show guy because he used to win all the smaller shows. I don't know how many he won. It was a lot. I want to say like a dozen. A lot of the smaller shows Darren Charles won. He still looks phenomenal for his age. At least from Trinidad. A lot of those guys from the Caribbean, they look young as hell. They all look like 20 years younger than they are. Appreciate the great content. Thank you, Emil. Samson, I wonder if Tony Freeman, Quincy Taylor interested. Tony Freeman, I don't know if Tony's very, very small compared to how it used to be. Of course, he could get big again. It's just a matter of getting back on a bunch of gear and eating a lot more food. Muscle memory, he'd get it right back. Quincy, I haven't heard a thing about Quincy in years. Quincy's got to be about 50 by now. Victor Martinez would be hard to beat. Yeah. Troy Alves, haven't heard about Troy in a long time. Is Dexter doing it? Well, nobody's doing it yet. They just announced that it's going to happen next August. It was just announced today's Monday, right? Yeah, yesterday they announced it. So yesterday at the Romania Muscle Fest, on stage was the first official announcement of the Masters Olympia. So until then, it was just talk. Now we don't have, the event. We don't have any promotional materials or anything yet, but now we know it's going to be in August. It's going to be in Romania. It's going to be invitation only. It will feature all men's divisions, which means open, 212, classic physique, and men's physique. So yeah. Hard age. It would be nice to see so many guys. Just worry for them, knowing what it takes, and kind of be dangerous. Yeah. It's not, bodybuilding is not safe for anybody, but I do think there's probably an added level of danger for guys my age or older. It's one reason I'm really hesitant. I stopped in 2013 competing after 24 years. And, as more and more years went by, I kept thinking I'd come back in a year or two. I'll come back maybe. As time went on, I'm like, nah. I mean, do I really want to go through all that again? I can get pretty lean and stuff and stay moderate and conservative with the gear. But if I was trying to win my pro card, or say I got my pro card and I wanted to do some Masters Pro show, I'd be loaded up to the gills. I'll be honest with you guys. I would have to be, because, my genetics they're nothing special. I mean, you can't make up for bad genetics with a ton of drugs, but at least you'd be a little bigger and harder looking than you would have been. So you won't look as bad compared to the guys with great genetics. Classic muscle. Victor still keeping big size and shape. Yeah, we said that. Mr. Olympia 2022. Oh, Rami. What's up, Rami? How you doing? I don't think they'll come in sharp or anything, just lean and stuff. I don't know. I mean, I think some of them would come in. Like if Phil Heath came back, I'm sure Phil would look phenomenal. Phil would never step on stage at anything less than his best. Like I said, he might still have trouble controlling his midsection, but he would come in shredded. The last couple Olympias that Phil did, he was not off. His condition was great. It was almost comical when I read some comments like, oh, well, Phil was off. Phil was not off at all. Are you kidding me? You could see every little fiber in that guy's body, the muscle fiber, all kinds of detail. But yeah, like I said, when they've had the Masters Olympia in the past, the condition was sorely lacking on a lot of the guys. It was missing. They were just not in any kind of shape, especially the older guys. Like I remember the late Ed Corney. Ed Corney did the Masters one year. It was sad. It was very sad to see, because he was smaller and he was just, there was like fat you could grab. And there was a few guys that had that much body fat where it looked like they had like love handles. You could grab them, like not one line in their quads, nothing. It was embarrassing. And I wouldn't want to see that. You hate to see your heroes come back in a much diminished form. It sort of takes away the magic. It doesn't take away from their legacy. They still did what they did if they won an Olympia or Arnold Classics, where they still did what they did in the sport. But we want to remember these guys a certain way, like at their best. Like, you know, if some fighter comes back 10 years after he retired and just gets in the ring or the octagon or whatever and gets just brutally beaten down because he's nothing like he used to be, that would be very sad to see. And this is kind of a similar situation. Are you an imposter? Are you Rami? That's not Rami, guys. Rami's not on our live chat. He's just calling himself Mr. Olympia 2022. Mr. Olympia. Ron, the hardest question going around is, who's your top 10 at this Mr. Olympia? I don't know, dude. And everyone wants it like in order. What's your top 10 in order? There's a couple of reasons I don't want to say it. I don't know how people are going to look until you see them that day. And second, if anybody that I say doesn't win, their fans are going to be up my ass, pissed off. How dare you say my favorite guy isn't going to win? Hunter's going to win. Nick's going to win. Samson's going to win. Hadi Chupan's going to win. William Bach going to win. All the fans of these guys, most of them, if you're a real fan, you support these guys and you want them to win and you expect them to win. That's why you're a fan. But if I sit here and say your guy is going to be not in the top 10 or say 10th place and you think he's going to win or be top 3, you're going to say, that freaking Ron, what an asshole. But I have no idea. I mean, you know, we got this Olympia is ridiculous. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. I said this earlier today that I keep forgetting some of the people who are in it. There's that many people qualified and there are that many good. Like, I kept forgetting about Dark Lunsford being in the show. I know he's in the show. Sometimes I forget about Samson, Hassan Mustafa. I forgot all about Rafael Brandao being in the show, Antoine Vallant. I mean, some of these guys, they qualified a long time ago, but still, talk about this is probably the most stacked Mr. Olympia in terms of talent in 15, 20 years, I'm going to say, because I've been around a while. Is this the hardest Olympia lineup or the 90s, early 2000s? There were some awesome lineups in the 90s and the early 2000s for sure. But you know what? I think this is up there. This Olympia is up there with any of those. And it's getting harder and harder for us old, bitter dudes to say, back in my day, back in the 90s, because bodybuilding is getting pretty damn great again. We got some Andrew Jack, blessing. We got some crazy new talent. Nick Walker, Hunter, I mean, jeez, Tonio Burton. Like I said, I'm forgetting like so many people because I think there's like 35 guys qualified for the Mr. Olympia. Classic has like 50 people qualified. Some of these other divisions, I think men's physique has 60. Bikini and figure probably have 60. It's going to be a crazy, crazy long weekend. And the judges, man. I feel for the judges because no matter what they do, no matter how they call it, I promise you a lot of people are going to say they're bribed, it's politics, these judges, or they're blind, they don't know what they're looking at, because there's going to be so many people in the show and all these people have fans, plus you put 35 guys who all won shows this year on the Mr. Olympia stage, plus the top 5 didn't have to do that, they're qualified already. You put them all on the same stage, yikes, they're all so good, and the judges it can't be a 35-way tie. You got to have first place all the way down. Although after 15th, it's did not place. You're going to have a lot of tied for 16th on the score sheet. It's going to be 16, 16, 16 for all the people who didn't make top 15. And sometimes you see did not place. But usually they'll just make everyone 16th. So if you're not in the top 15, if there's 30 guys, 40 guys, 100 guys, you're 16th. You're tied for 16th with all those because the judges have enough shit to do in such a short amount of time. They don't have time to go down the line and say, does this guy deserve to be 38th or 39th place? I don't know. And deliberate it that closely. Where's your top 6 for this Olympia? I'm going to save all that until we get closer to the show. We still have 5 weeks to go. I want to see more progress pictures, updates, and even though those never tell the whole story, because some people look amazing in update pictures and don't look so great on stage, and vice versa. Sometimes people who you weren't really worried about or expecting to do well, you see them and like, whoa, they're the ones who catch your eye. Do you think Olympia will be in December again? Well, it's December this year. It was October last year. Also, the upcoming Arnold Classic March will be stacked for sure, yeah. I would like to see the Olympia just pick a month. I don't care if it's October. I like it in October. I like it earlier because for up until the pandemic years, the Olympia was always in September or October, always. It was a fall show. And, the Arnold was always in March. We knew that. you know, the season used to start with the Pro Ironman. It's no longer around. That would be the first show of the year in like late February. The Arnold Classic would be a week or two after that. And then the Olympia wouldn't be till September, October. And then the contest season was, well, they would have like a Grand Prix tour. They do like 6 or 10 shows all across Europe in the 2, 3, 4 weeks after the Olympia. And then that would be it for the season. You wouldn't have another show until the Arnold. I liked it that way. But, you know, I'm old. I'm set in my ways. I just like that structure. But thoughts on Baruz beating Brett in Romania this past weekend? Well, I watched the stream. I was watching it yesterday, and we did coverage on this channel. If you check that out, I thought he deserved it. I agree with Giles Thomas, who was the commentator for the pay-per-view, and he was sitting right behind the judges, so he had a great vantage point. That Brett probably had the show won after the judging, but Baruz came back for the finals a few hours later, so full. Condition was just as good. Neither one of them lost any condition, but Brett stayed the same, and Baruz came back so much bigger and fuller looking. I'm sure it still came down to like a very small point margin. I didn't look at the score sheet. It would be on ifbbpro.com, but I bet he didn't win by, like, it wasn't all first place votes. It wasn't a landslide. And I don't think anyone really would have been overly upset if Brett Wilkin had won. You might have heard some boos because Baruz looked phenomenal for sure. But I don't think people would have, like, there would have been a riot or anything. I thought Brett could have won. It's the best Brett Wilkin I've ever seen. Certainly better than when he did the Arnold back in March. So props to him and his coach, Matt Jansen. They really pulled off an amazing look, and they came that close. But the good news is there's another show in Alicante, Spain. Is it another Europa or something? I don't know. There's another show in Alicante, Spain, less than 2 weeks away that Brett will do. That's qualification for the 2023 Mr. Olympia. He's doing that, and obviously he's got a great chance. He almost won this show. None of the Olympia guys are going to be in it. They're all the people that are already qualified. They're nothing for him to worry about. So he might pick up his qualification. It's like 12 days away in Alicante, Spain for next year's Olympia. So will Hunter and Nick switch places, or will it be the same Hunter ahead of Nick as of last year? Well, we have all these new guys. We have Andrew jacked, and I suspect Andrew's going to beat one or both of these guys. I just have a feeling because he just destroyed that Texas Pro Show. I know that wasn't the toughest lineup. And the Arnold UK, again, it wasn't an Olympia lineup. We still haven't seen Andrew jacked on a stage with that caliber of competitor staying next to him, like Rami and Hadi, Brandon Curry. We haven't seen that. So I don't see Andrew jacked like winning or blowing all those guys away, but I wouldn't be overly surprised if he beats either Hunter or Nick this year, just because he's something we've never seen. He's so tall, so wide structurally. I still think he needs to fill out a little bit more to be at his final form, but he's very, very good right now. And he does need to bring in a little better condition. Glutes and hams were not really dry and crispy looking at all at either of those shows, which I expected him to be leaner at the Arnold UK show. And to me, he didn't look like he was much leaner, if any, than he had been in Texas 6 weeks before that. But we'll see. So, all right, now we're getting way off on tangents, guys. But so this was the live version of this. Of course, the comment section, you can comment on this for, until next August if you want to. So please, if you're not seeing this live, drop some comments below. I love seeing those and responding to those. I love feedback and just like having these conversations. But stay on topic about the Masters Olympia, because I want to talk a lot more about the Mr. Olympia in the weeks to come as we get closer to the show. But right now, today we just talked about the Masters Olympia. Great. It's great to see it coming back. Props to Jake Wood for deciding to hold it again. It's been gone for a very long time, and there has been a lot of interest in bringing it back. So now we will see it again. So great. Thanks, guys, for watching. Appreciate it so much. I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.